Hello and welcome to our broadcast. I'm Nikki Straley. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist with Providence. As a reminder, the information provided during this event is for educational purposes only. It is not intended nor is it implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider to determine the appropriateness of the information for your own situation. If you have any questions regarding medical conditions or treatment plans, please consult your physician. Participating in this event with this clinician or these clinicians does not create a clinician-patient relationship. Now, let's begin. Joining me during this live event will be Stacey Cochran, Sports Medicine Clinical Program Director at Providence Health System in Providence Sports Medicine. So thank you for joining us today, Stacey. I would like you to tell me a little bit more about yourself and your role at Providence.
Hi, Nikki, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Welcome, everyone. I have a background in exercise and sports science and then a doctorate in physical therapy. I worked at Providence as an outpatient PT for several years before transitioning into my current role, where I'm a program manager for the sports medicine program. Right now, I direct most of my attention towards community health and wellness education for people of all ages, from youth all the way to the aging senior population. I'm also a mom of 3 very active kids, and so I'm facing what I believe a lot of our listeners are facing right now is how are we going to manage this back to school and working from home?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about this fall, what are some of your biggest concerns in your kids returning to school, especially if they're going to be online, in terms of their exercise?
I think my biggest concern really is twofold. One, the amount of screen time these kids are going to be getting, and then the sedentary lifestyle that comes with that. As we face this new reality of either distance learning or the hybrid model, the inevitable changes of weather, we're going to find ourselves probably outside less. We're going to find ourselves more distracted, have more things to do. And, from what I see and hear, the PE programming with schools is either being completely eliminated or modified. And so kids aren't going to have that natural kind of shove out the door to be active. And so I think really it's just trying to figure out how we keep our kids active with all the changes we face right now.
Absolutely. So has this changed your exercise recommendations since the onset of COVID-19?
No, not really. We're still recommending kids get that 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise every day. That can be done in bouts of 30 minutes or even broken up into 4 15-minute segments in a day. I think finding whatever works best is great. But I think what has changed is how kids are getting that exercise. Most organized sports aren't happening. Playgrounds are closed or less available. And so finding ways to be active is really what's changed.
So how do you propose, or what are you thinking about helping parents manage their kids off screen time?
Well, I think, having similar expectations, most of us have expectations of our kids to do chores, to do homework, throw in that expectation of being physically active. Now, what that looks like is going to be done very differently in every family, but some of the same planning that goes into what your week looks like, whether it's meal planning, plan that exercise, check in with your kids, see what they want to do, see what ideas they have. And I think it's also important to be flexible. We can schedule all we want, but sometimes that doesn't work. So we need to be flexible, and whatever worked, great, move forward, and what didn't work, figure out why that didn't work and see what changes might be helpful.
Yeah, that sounds great. So why is keeping a schedule important?
Well, I think we all know, for most of us anyway, when we have a schedule, when we have goals, when we have expectations written down for ourselves, it's more likely to happen. If we just say we're going to do it, but never figure out exactly when, it doesn't necessarily happen. Most educators will tell you, classrooms keep a schedule. I think we all can appreciate that that's what kids need. And so figuring out how to schedule exercise, just like we're going to figure out how to get our daily reading or get our homework done, is really important.
Yeah, and I'd say modeling that behavior is really important too. I know, as a parent, I schedule my exercise in like I schedule a a haircut or something else. And so, it's like you said, if you don't put it on the schedule, it's probably not going to happen. And so if you're modeling that behavior, I think that's really important for kids. So what kind of exercises do you suggest for busy parents and kids are at home doing online school? What kinds of things do you suggest?
Well, I think, traditional forms of exercise are great. Soccer skills in the backyard, shooting hoops, going for a run, going for a bike ride. Those are all great. But that doesn't work for everybody. And if you're looking for more creative things to do, you can, talk to the kids, figure out what they did in PE, see how you can modify that for home. You can even try things like a jump rope contest, hula hoop contest, planking contest. Nikki, I know you know something about that. Challenge your friends and family. Keep it fun, keep it creative, and make sure it's something the kids enjoy doing.
Sounds fun. I think I might want to come over to your house. Do you have any programs that could be useful for parents and educators?
Yes, we have a couple things already on the Providence Sports Medicine website. One, we've spent some time throwing together some ideas on fun ways to exercise. And then there's also an exercise challenge grid. So for those people that like journaling and like writing things down, we have created a grid where you can chart your minutes, your exercise minutes by the day, by the week, and by the month. So you could set a goal for yourself. You want to get so many minutes, challenge somebody in your family, or maybe you get a special treat at the end of your goal. The other thing that we've done is our team has created for the older, more competitive athlete, we have a 6-week return to sport program. Now, we don't necessarily know when return to sport is, but it's a safe and really fantastic program to keep kids in shape and ready for that return to sport when it might happen. And then lastly, we're hoping to launch in October multi-week, multi-sport programming for younger kids. And we'll each week feature a different sport, such as soccer, basketball. We'll look at some non-traditional ones. We'll once a week kick it off with a 15-20 minute information session that we'll make available free to everyone, and it'll include a dynamic warm-up and then some with a coach, some specific sports skills and some instruction to keep the kids busy for the rest of the week until we come back with the next weekly topic. And this is for
great. Yeah. What age?
Well, it'll focus primarily on kindergarten through 5th grade, although anybody, especially if you're new to a sport and want to check it out. And, those young kids that have played these sports, it'll be a great refresher and encourage them to get that exercise in every day. And those that are interested in maybe trying something, it'll be at a level basic enough that they could get something out of it as well. And our goal would be to help these kids get that 60 minutes of exercise every day.
Absolutely. I think that sounds like a great program that parents and educators can really get behind and support our kids, especially knowing that they're going to be facing their screens so much more, than they ever have before. So I know that you were a collegiate athlete. Is there anything that you wished you would have known when you were a kid as far as exercise goes that you wish, if you could go back in time and tell yourself something, anything that you would have told yourself?
Well, a couple of things. One, you're going to touch on this a little bit later, I think, but how important nutrition is in supporting performance, if I were to learn. But I have to say, I was extremely lucky. I come from a family that valued being physically active, valued exercise. My parents were fantastic role models. They always had us out and about. I started running at an early age with my dad, and just really enjoyed that time with him, and they did a great job of supporting whatever we wanted to do. And it really, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was giving me a love of exercise and a love of competition, a love of sport. And I think sometimes that in itself was the best gift. I didn't know what I was learning then, and I can spend all the time in the world talking to kids today and telling them how important it is, but really role modeling is, in my mind, so important, because kids don't necessarily get it. They you can tell them it's important to do these things, and they will. But when they see you do it, and when they're doing it and they start to understand how it makes them feel, I think that's really the best lesson you can give them.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you can think of in terms of tips for parents or kids or educators in terms of exercise or sports or keeping active this fall?
Well, as I just touched on, I mean, role modeling is so important. If you're active, if you're taking care of yourself, it'll send the message to your kids to do so. If they see you scheduling out and figuring out when you're going to take time to do this exercise, they will as well. And I think also, gosh, we've got to give ourselves a break too. These are challenging times. We can strive for perfection, but rarely will we ever meet that. And so give yourself a break and get to the end of the week and figure out what worked and what didn't, and persevere and try again the next week.
Yeah, just get out there, right? I mean, as long as you're active, as long as you're moving, what does that look like? So I do have one question for you. So one question is, where can people find out more information about that 6-week return to sport program from Providence Sports Medicine?
I believe we'll share the link to our Providence Sports Medicine website in this at the end. And once you get to the Providence Sports Medicine website, if you go to the performance page, you will find all the information there. You'll find the 6 weeks and the information on how to access everything.
Great information. Thank you so much, Stacy.
Yeah, you're welcome. Since we've covered a little bit of my area of expertise, why don't we turn, Nikki, to your level or to your area of expertise? And I'm wondering if you would talk to me a little bit about what you'd recommend as far as eating and nutrition goes to maintain an optimal immune system, especially given this time of COVID.
Yeah, well, the first thing I would always say is we need to eat more fruits and vegetables. And I know that sounds so simplistic, but we know that people that eat more fruits and vegetables tend to be healthier, tend to have less cancer, tend to have better immune systems, tend to have, fewer infections. And so if I could just, encourage one thing, it would just be to eat more fruits and vegetables. And then secondly, there's been a little bit of research on vitamin D with COVID-19. So there was at least one study that showed that people that had low vitamin D status were actually sicker and maybe even required ICU admission when they had COVID-19. So if you could keep your vitamin D levels up, I think that might be beneficial. Vitamin D can come from fatty fish like tuna or salmon. You can find it in fortified dairy products or cereals, and then supplements are another way to keep up your vitamin D.
Okay, great. Yeah. What about nutrition as far as improving our energy levels or maybe even fueling for performance?
Well, it depends on if you're talking about adults or kids. So, when we're talking about kids, the first thing that we have to remember is that they are in the middle of growth and development. So any nutrition that they eat will first of all go to make sure that they're growing properly. And then anything extra that they eat will contribute to the area of performance. So when I see kids that are underfeeding, and I see that a lot, those are the kids that maybe do struggle with performance. They do kind of, run out of gas or run out of energy, in the second half of their race or their game or, their match or whatever it is. And so making sure you're getting adequate calories, just baseline, is first of all really important. And then the same thing for adults. I also always say, if you don't put gas in the car, it won't go. And it sounds so simple, but it's really true. So many times people are worried about, losing weight or, not eating too many calories. But if you're not eating enough, your performance is going to suffer.
Yep, I agree. I've been there and I've seen it also.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about concerns returning to school with kids and exercise. How about for you? What are your biggest concerns as kids return to school from a nutrition standpoint?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, first of all, kids are going to be, some kids, are going to be going back to school, on a hybrid program. And some kids are going to not be going back to school at all. And they're going to be at home on screens all day. So, are they going to have a designated snack time? Are they going to be able to have enough time for lunch? I mean, those are some, kind of basic questions. But, on a bigger level, there's a lot of food insecurity in our country. And so kids that have been relying on the school food service program are not going to be able, I'm concerned about them not getting enough food. And so something that's actually really exciting I heard recently is that the USDA just approved school districts to be able to serve meals for kids ages 1 to 18 that live in their district, even if the kids are not either old enough for school or not enrolled in their district. So if you're someone that is worried about, food security, definitely contact your local school district and find out how they're distributing those meals, because that will be going through the end of December this year. So I think that'll be a great resource for people.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you. How about, and I know I need this advice from you, what are some simple ideas for healthy snacks, things to have on hand for kids to either grab themselves or as a mom or as a dad, as a parent at home, that I can quickly prepare for my kids when they need it?
Yeah. Putting together a handout, and I thought, well, why reinvent the wheel if there's something else out there? So I went out on Pinterest, and lo and behold, there is a lot of information out there. So just to make it easier, I actually made a Pinterest board that is just kids eating and snacks. And so you're welcome to go to my Pinterest board. I'm just Nikki Straley. You can look at my Pinterest board for that. You can also just look on Pinterest. I also have a colleague from Real Mom Nutrition, and she has a downloadable handout that I actually just printed and put it on my fridge. And it's 100 easy meals and snacks for kids. So, that's something that you can just put out, for your kids to look at. But in terms of what things I like to have, or what I have available, just I like to put vegetables on the counter. I know that sounds really, like really just vegetables, but yeah, you just cut up vegetables, you put them in bowls, you put them on the counter and watch them disappear. Kids walk by and they take some carrots, they take some broccoli. If they like dip, put some ranch dip out there or ketchup or whatever it is that they like to do. So leaving vegetables out is something that I like to do. Other easy things would be like, hummus and pita, or we eat a lot of leftovers at our house, or cottage cheese and fruit, or nut butter. And that could be, peanut butter. It could be sunflower butter, like your typical peanut butter and jelly. You could put it on bread, or you could put it on a wrap. Kids love wraps, by the way. Skewers are kind of fun. So you can do like meat and cheese and veggies on like a little skewer, serve it that way. Some other ideas, English muffin pizzas. So it could be food that they would, normally eat, but maybe put a little twist on it, make it fun for them. And of course, making it accessible. So you have to have that food present in the house so that they can put it together if they're needing to put together their own meals, for lunch while they're home for online school.
Do you recommend families do some meal planning ahead in there to kind of get the week started off right?
Yes, absolutely. I think that meal prep, meal planning, and doing that, the weekend before really makes a lot of sense, because a lot of times what happens is, we all have good intentions and Monday and Tuesday look pretty good, but, by the time Friday comes along, it's like either, we're kind of over it, or it's hard to think of new things to have. And so that's why I think having this list on my fridge is going to be really helpful. And then again, making sure you have the food available so that, people have different choices. So some of the things I always keep different kinds of tortillas. I keep different kinds of bread. I keep, peanut butter or almond flour or almond butter, those kinds of things available. So you can always make a sandwich if you need to.
Okay, thanks. I think sometimes the teenagers get a little bit of a bad rap for their poor nutrition habits. I know this isn't always true, but they can get a bad rap for it. Thinking back as yourself as a teen, what do you wish you knew about nutrition that you know now? How could you have helped yourself out of it?
Probably almost everything. It's kind of funny, but you were hinting at it earlier, and I just didn't realize the value, I think, of good nutrition, in particular, the area of sports and performance. So, I remember in high school, I would eat breadsticks for lunch, and then I'd go out and, play a soccer game, or, do 4 events in a track meet in the afternoon. And there's no way that the breadsticks I ate at lunch were enough fuel to what I was asking my body to do for hours in the afternoon. So really making sure that we have a good foundation with a good solid breakfast, a good solid lunch, a good recovery meal, which is dinner time, and making sure we really are focused on fueling our kids well for success, both in sport, but also just in life. And their brains need all that fuel for thinking and processing. So I wish I would have known how important, really getting that adequate nutrition was. I think I probably could have, maybe performed even better.
Yep, I agree. I certainly agree. You talked about having that plate of vegetables on the counter, and I know also we hear having a bowl of fruit or fruit handy to grab. Are there other staples that you suggest that people have on hand? Those
Yeah.
snacks or those quick meals?
So, some things that I always have, I have canned tuna or canned salmon always available. I actually have frozen fruits and veggies available too, because, the fresh stuff sometimes goes bad. And so it's nice to have, either, canned is nice too, but frozen is kind of my second favorite. So fresh and then frozen and then canned, kind of in that order. I mentioned bread and nut butter. The other thing too is to find out what your kids like to eat. Like, I actually don't love sandwiches. So I've always been a little harder to feed because my mom said she couldn't just send me with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at my lunch. And so it was always a little more difficult. So my kids love to eat leftovers. So one of the things we do is we cook extra at dinner the night before, and then they reheat it and use it for leftovers. When they're going to school, I actually send them with thermoses. So I have a couple little samples here. So, like larger size for an older child, smaller size for a smaller child. I can really keep that food hot until lunchtime. And I always like a hot meal. So, it's kind of knowing what your kid likes. Another little interesting tip, not related to food exactly, is we have these little mats. So my mom made this one. It Velcros. It's like a little sandwich mat. There's a company called Wrappin' Mat that makes them. And you can put your sandwich in it and fold it up, and it goes in your lunch. But what's really great, like during COVID, if your kid is going and eating at their desk, at a mealtime, they can unwrap it with their sandwich on top and keep it kind of away from the germs on the desk. So that's something that, you can just wash it in the washer later and wash it up and keep it clean. So just another little tip.
Great tips, Nikki. So on top of those, what else are you going to do to support your kids' nutrition during this upcoming school year?
Yeah, so those are great questions. So we talked about how important it is to plan ahead. Really involve your family, involve your kids in the process. Asking them, what they want, when you go to the grocery store. So, just coming home with things that they don't like doesn't make sense. So asking, what would you like to see in the cupboard? When you're hungry for a snack, what snacks are you hoping are going to be there? And then maybe also filtering in some things that are a little bit different, or things that you haven't eaten for a while. I know since we've all been home for about 6 months, there's quite a bit of food fatigue in our house. I don't know if you have that problem too, where it's like, I'm tired of seeing the same foods over and over again. So I'm kind of making it a list right now of foods that we haven't eaten in a while and kind of freshen it up a little bit, because that way it'll be like, oh, new food. That's always exciting. So one of the things I'm probably going to buy would be like hummus and pita. So we haven't had that for a while. Just you can buy those little tiny, hummus containers. They sell a bunch of them. You can get them at Costco or something. Or you can get a big container and you can just scoop it out into a small bowl. But like hummus and pita and hummus and vegetables can be, another little snack. Some people like a snacky lunch, so we might do something like a cheese and cracker and veggie lunch one day. I mentioned leftovers because our family really likes leftovers. But it's really just coming up with things that maybe you haven't had, for a while, looking for ideas like on Pinterest or using some of these printable handouts that give you some ideas, just thinking outside the box and then involving your kids in the process, I think is really important.
One of the things I like to do with my kids, because I learned early on, if I don't involve them, then I'm either trying to force food down them or ended up with food that goes to waste. And so I agree, it's so important. My kids will get stuck in a rut and they'll start eating the same thing over and over again. So I try and time it with seasons of what might be somewhat fresh in the season, and it encourages them to try different things and maybe not eat berries year round or whatever it might be, but to talk about, well, this is what's fresher right now. And I don't know if that's something you've ever seen done, but it helps me teach the kids too about what's, everything has its own growing season. And or guess what, we're going to have something that we froze from the summer garden and do that too. So those are a couple of things I like to do with my kids.
I love doing that too. And we have our garden that we planted in the spring. And so it's fun because a lot of our produce is is coming ripe now, especially the tomatoes. And, we always joke that, if you have a tomato in the winter, you think that's what tomatoes are. When you eat a fresh homegrown tomato in the summer, you're like, why would I eat a tomato in the middle of the winter? This doesn't taste the same. So yeah, there's definitely, in the fall, we think about kind of our squashes and our pumpkins and things like that. And so really shifting those meals to kind of represent what types of foods are seasonal, I think is great. We've been kind of eating some light summer fare, a lot of stuff on the barbecue this summer. And so this fall, we might be eating, more soups and things like that. And in the winter, maybe more like a stew, some of those things that are a little bit more homey, or that kind of comfort food, I think that makes you feel good in the winter. So looking forward to some of those meals that, we haven't had in a while, because I don't eat stews, in the middle of summer, probably doesn't make sense. So those are the kinds of things, I think we can all look forward to. And, really involving your family in the process is, I can't say that enough. It really is important. We also get imperfect produce delivered to our house, which is just vegetables and other foods that sometimes they're, a kind of a wonky shaped food, or maybe they have a surplus or something. And so we order that every other week at our house. And so it's fun because the kids also get involved in that. And we cook some different vegetables because things show up in our box that maybe we don't grow in our garden, or we don't buy at the grocery store, and we're not sure exactly, what to do with them. So are there any questions that we have for the...
Nikki, I see one question coming in, and it they noticed the nutrition counseling services that are offered in California. Are people in Oregon able to make virtual appointments, or maybe do you know anything about Oregon or Washington or other states?
I don't know specifically about Washington or California, but I do know in Oregon you can do some in person and some virtual appointments. Usually those are at the hospitals. So the hospital nutrition services department usually has a good resource for meeting personally one-on-one with a dietitian, which I think is great. And there's also dietitians that specialize in pediatrics. So if you have a picky eater and you want to work with your kid on their picky eating, I definitely recommend working with a dietitian one-on-one. So I think go ahead.
Nikki, I was just going to say one quick thing that I'd recommend for families looking for some guidance on nutrition and exercise. The FIT program offered through the Heart Institute is a great resource. You can, as a family, apply. It's free. I know they're opening up their application process right now. It's a 6-month program. It's a pretty intensive counseling on nutrition and fitness and all aspects of wellness. So for families interested in that, you might want to check that out as well. The Providence Heart Institute FIT program.
That is a great resource. And it's always nice to know, Providence does have so many great online and in-person resources. And so I encourage our families to really use those resources, because a lot of them are free, and, they can be really great. So I think we should just go ahead and wrap up. So Stacey, I wanted to thank you for joining me today, and for everyone listening, and for those of you who sent in questions. So if you're looking for medical advice, please don't forget to visit providence.org. Make sure you follow us on social media, on Twitter, on Providence Health System, on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And also you can follow us on Providence Sports Medicine. So thanks a lot for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Yes. Goodbye.